The Age of Jackson. The main idea of this passage is reading to learn about the main events that took place while Andrew Jackson was president. And even though for your assignments this week, you're going to have it broken up into sections, I'm going to make a recording of this whole section right here. So you can keep coming back to this, this reading to hear this if you would like to have the audio to pair with your reading. The Age of Jackson. The year 1826 marked the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. In that time, the country had grown from the original 13 states to 24 states. Its land area had more than doubled in size. Ideas about democracy also were growing with the nation. In a democracy, the people rule, and they are free to make choices about their lives and the government. Democracy grows. In the early days of the country, voting was usually limited to property owners. In most of the new western states, such as Kentucky and Tennessee, this changed. Those states gave the vote to all white men, not just to those who owned property. This practice soon spread to all states. No other country in the world was so democratic, even though women and most free African Americans could not vote, and Native Americans were not counted as citizens. Once all white men could vote, there was a change in the kind of person elected. People elected as public officials were no longer always wealthy or well-educated, well-educated men who owned property. Some, in fact, had little money or schooling. Davy Crockett from Tennessee was an example of this new kind of leader. Many felt that the frontier spirit of the United States was reflected in Davy Crockett's motto. His motto was, "Be always sure you're right, then go ahead." Davy Crockett held several local and state offices in Tennessee before winning a seat in the House of Representatives. When Crockett first ran for office, he had to say he knew nothing about government. "I had never read even a newspaper in my life," he said. Crockett learned about government by being part of it. The election of Andrew Jackson. In 1828, Andrew Jackson of Tennessee was elected the 7th President of the United States. The 6 presidents before him had all come from families from either Massachusetts or Virginia. Now, for the first time, a person from a western state had been elected. It was also the first election in which all white American men could vote. Many of the new voters liked Jackson because they felt he was a common man like them. Jackson was born in the back country of South Carolina to a poor family living in a log cabin. Tough and stubborn, Jackson taught himself law by reading books. In time, he became a successful lawyer and later a judge. While serving in the military, Jackson got the nickname Old Hickory. Hickory being a very hard wood. "He's tough," said his soldiers, "tough as hickory." As a general during the War of 1812, Jackson became a national hero after his troops beat the British at the Battle of New Orleans. When Jackson became president on March 4, 1829, his followers were overjoyed. Thousands had streamed into Washington, D.C. for the inauguration. Many of them later showed up at the White House for the party that followed. Rough and tumble people from the frontier stood in their muddy boots on the satin-covered chairs to get a look at their hero. To keep from being crushed by the crowd, Jackson had to escape by a back door. As president, Andrew Jackson continued to be both tough and stubborn. He fought to bring about an end to the Second Bank of the United States. In Jackson's eyes, the bank was a hydra of corruption. A hydra is a many-headed monster from Greek mythology. The troubled First Bank of the United States, which had been created while George Washington was president, had closed after the War of 1812. Another bank, the Second Bank of the United States, was started in 1816. This bank was influential, and it played an important role in the United States economy. In spite of its success, President Jackson believed the bank was too powerful. It controlled 1/5 of all the banknotes in the United States and 1/3 of all the nation's gold. Jackson argued that the bank put too much money power in the hands of the wealthy bank owners and a few rich customers, and did not care about the needs of the general public. Saying, "The bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it," Jackson vetoed a bill that would have given the bank a new charter or contract. Government should not help the rich get richer, Jackson believed. Instead, it should shower its favors alike on the rich and the low, the rich and the poor. Indian removal. Jackson's toughness also meant harsh and unfair treatment of the Native Americans who lived east of the Mississippi River. In 1830, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act. It had been Jackson's idea. This act said that all Indians east of the Mississippi had to leave their lands and move west to the Indian Territory. This area spread across most of what is now the state of Oklahoma. Many tribes refused to leave their homelands. Instead, some chose to stay and fight against the soldiers sent to remove them. Led by Chief Black Hawk, the Sauk and Fox Indians in the Great Lakes region fought the United States troops and Illinois militia in the Black Hawk War. In the southeastern United States, the Seminoles of Florida, led by Osceola and helped by runaway slaves, also fought United States troops. In both wars, many Native Americans were either killed or forced to leave their homeland. Instead of fighting on the battlefield, the Cherokee Nation chose to fight for its homeland in the United States courts. Led by Chief John Ross, the Cherokees were one of the richest tribes in the United States. They had many towns and villages throughout the Southeast, including New Echota, Georgia, the capital of the Cherokee Nation. In a treaty signed in 1791, the United States government had recognized the Cherokee Nation's independence. In 1828, however, the state of Georgia said that Cherokee laws were no longer in effect. As a result, when gold was discovered on Cherokee lands a year later, settlers were free to pour in and stake their claims. In 1832, the Cherokees' case had gone all the way to the United States Supreme Court. There, Chief Justice John Marshall gave the court's ruling or decision. He said that Georgia had no say over the Cherokee lands. The court's ruling, however, was ignored, and federal troops were ordered to remove the Cherokees. In late 1838, federal troops forced the last large group of Cherokees to leave their lands. They traveled from North Carolina and Georgia through Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas, more than 800 miles, to the Indian Territory. And by the time their journey ended in March 1839, more than 4,000 Cherokees had died of cold, disease, and lack of food. The Cherokees called their long journey the Trail Where They Cried, and it later became known as the Trail of Tears.